Welcome to TLDR Dota News. So for this episode, we have a little more roster info for you guys, a Dotapit summary in case you didn't manage to catch all of the games or just want to have a recap of how they went to remind you, as well as some more news about upcoming tournaments, and then a PSA about a new game mode that's out. So let's jump right in. So first up for a little bit of roster news, Team Dialcom, which is a South American squad, we're playing in the Star Ladder qualifiers. Now, they had a matchup against DC in this 2-game series where it was said that they just kind of disbanded without playing the match. However, a day later, they played up against Doo-Wop in Star Ladder, so we're not exactly sure what happened, but they disbanded for about a day, and now they're back, so well, Sunsband. But as Escape announced a few weeks ago, they did drop their sponsorship of the roster with Syndran, Era, and Koikva, and then Syndran announced a little bit later that the team would be rounded out by Trixie and Hani, reminding us of the good old Fnatic EU days. And today, NiP, Ninjas in Pajamas, announced that they would once again be returning to the Dota scene. They previously had a Dota squad a few years ago, and they haven't been present in the Dota scene for the last few years after that squad didn't really work out. So they're back in Dota now, and we'll have to see how this team does in whatever qualifiers that they're in the future. They are not in the Star Ladder qualifier finals right now, so we won't see them playing in those matches. As for other roster news, we did note in previous episodes that Fnatic did not roster lock, and we don't know what their full roster is, as the roster they had at, I believe, ESL 1 was not their final one. So they have withdrawn from the Dota 2 Asia Championships qualifiers at DAC, and so it would seem that perhaps they don't have a full roster yet, or they're not ready to play in these qualifiers. We're not sure, but this announcement was made, so we won't see Fnatic playing in DAC qualifiers, unfortunately. Dotapit just happened, so I'm going to take you through each day of Dotapit in case you missed any of it, and I wouldn't want you to miss out on any of the glorious experiences that was the LAN tournament in Split, Croatia that just happened. So starting off day one. Day one experienced heavy delays as computers failed, and we were occasionally treated to robotic, fuzzy audio reminiscent of LANs so about 5 years past. It was so kind of G2A.com to remind us of what we've been missing out on with all of these well-run tournaments that we've been experiencing lately. Thanks for that, guys. So on the first day, Ember ended up winning all of the games in OG versus IG, playing on both teams, so he is coming back into the meta. Elements, the last-minute stand-in invite that had to replace Wings Gaming, took an early exit from the tournament. The reason they were invited instead of Wings is 1, Wings couldn't get a visa, and 2, Elements were the first place runner-up in the European qualifier, so they were kind of next in line to take a spot here at Dotapit. OG advanced on to the winners bracket final, as you can see with the brackets up on the screen. Moving on to day 2 of Dotapit, I think we saw slightly less delays here as the other 4 teams in the bracket fought it out. Digital Chaos were the first team eliminated on day 2, surprising as they just won the previous tournament they attended, with EG advancing on to the winners bracket final. So, like I said, a few less delays, but it was still a rather long day with its own special set of challenges courtesy of those incredible AMD PCs. Day 3 of Dotapit, so the last day of the tournament with actually the most games that could possibly be played and actually were played. So the longest day of the tournament was, you guessed it, the final day of the tournament when everybody had flights early morning the next day. Day 3 saw, to start us off, with 3 best of 1s to get through most of the losers bracket. IG knocked Secret out of the tournament, and then Team Faceless knocked out VP, which was pretty surprising as a lot of the odds websites had it as about 75% in favor of VP, so that was a surprise. And then Faceless continued their lower bracket run, taking out Invictus Gaming next. Now from there we moved into the winners bracket final where OG and EG faced off. OG were unable to find a way to win against EG and dropped into the lower bracket up against Team Faceless. Now this is where things got interesting. Faceless had a pretty decent start in their game with Black playing Pudge. Now, if you didn't know, Black is normally the hard carry player for Faceless, but in this case, he stepped down from the hard carry role, picked up that roaming Pudge, and was kind of a nuisance in their game. So the game did look promising for Faceless as they managed to kill Anna's Ember Spirit over and over and over again. But as they focused on Anna, No-Tail just managed to continue farming on his anti-mage. And once he picked up his Aghanim Scepter, that lovely balanced item that it is, they kind of steamrolled over Faceless, taking multiple barracks in one push and really turning the game around for them, knocking Faceless out of the tournament. And OG moved on to face up against EG again in the grand finals on the same day. So speaking of the grand finals, OG and EG matched up one last time for what was a best of 5 grand finals, and the series went the full 5 games. Now, due to the collapse of the European servers during Game 2, the day was delayed even further, and games did not finish until well into the early morning in Croatia. I think finishing around 4 a.m. So those lovely 6 a.m. flights that some of the talent had to take, a little bit of a tight squeeze for them. I'm sure that was very enjoyable. The event was saved thanks to all of the incredible Dota that we got to see. So OG pretty much destroyed when they got their hands on Underlord, but in other games they really did struggle up against EG. They had issues dealing with Universe's Enigma and kind of the crowd control that Enigma can provide. And then Game 5 sort of gave us the battle of snipers, with the Goblin forced to hand over his crown to Lone Druid, the new champion of Ho Ho Ha Ha. As EG managed to win the 5th game and take home about $63,000 and the Dotapit championship title. Now, to talk a little more about that Lone Druid that I mentioned, I want to talk about the heroes of the tournament. So due to technical difficulties with the finals and those European server crashes, not all of the games are in Dota Buff, which is where I pulled these stats from, but approximately, Ember was picked 16 times with a 75% win rate, and his Spirit brother 12 times, also with a 75% win rate, so these spirits did rather well. Storm Spirit did not do quite so well. He wasn't picked nearly as often, and then he also had a sub 50% win rate. Now, Lone Druid was played several times, and in the grand final, it was very successful. Now, this isn't the Radiance Rush Lone Druid that you've been used to seeing over the last several years. This is the Lone Druid who has big dreams of being a sniper one day. He has a range-increasing talent and a build including Dragonlance and Maelstrom, a little different from what you would expect to see. Now, if we take a look at the rest of the heroes, out of the heroes picked a minimum of 10 games in the LAN finals. In addition to the spirits, Slardar and Rubik came out on top with a greater than 50% win rate and being heavily picked. And then Lifestealer, Weaver, and Vengeful Spirit all saw a sub 50% win rate, so these heroes did not do so well, even though they were fairly popular. Starladder I-League Season 3 is kind of the current and upcoming Dota that we have to look forward to. So Wings and one team that is yet to be announced are direct invites, and China qualifiers have finished up, so VGJ and IG Vitality qualified in China. The Southeast Asian qualifier has finished, so that team turned out to be TNC Pro Team, although Faceless and Warriors Gaming were very, very close to making it. Now, in Europe, Starladder had several phases of invites. So they had open qualifiers, and then they had a phase 2, where open qualifier teams joined the phase 2 qualifier teams. Those guys all played each other to then get access to the phase 3 teams, which will then be what you normally consider the main qualifier for the event. Now, VP did withdraw their spot from that phase 3 qualifier, so the 2 runner-up teams from phase 2, which is Friends and Vega, played out a match to determine who would be taking that last spot in the final round of qualifiers for Starladder. And so for upcoming tournaments, like I said, there's the Starladder qualifiers, with the LAN final taking place in Shanghai in February, and then DAC Season 2 is following that, also in Shanghai. The qualifiers for that will be beginning, I believe, in early February. And then, of course, we have the Kiev Major. Qualifiers for the Kiev Major will start on March 6th for open qualifiers, and then the main qualifiers will run from the 10th to the 13th. Now, as always with Valve, we don't know how many teams will be invited and how many spots we allocated for these qualifiers for the Kiev Major. Keep in mind that previously we only had 4 regions for qualifiers to come from. However, recently Valve did announce that the South American region and the CIS region would be getting their own separate qualifiers. So this means either potentially less spots to the Europe and NA region, or less invites and more qualifier spots all around. Now, another thing to note is that because of Boston's single elimination format style, places 4th through 8th are actually all the same. Or sorry, 5th through 8th are all the same place. So inviting top 6 or something like that is not as easy to decide, since you have 4 teams that all essentially came the same place because of that single elimination format. And for a PSA, Dark Moon is a special event that Valve has released. Now, it's only going to go through February 6th, so if you really enjoy killing hordes and hordes of enemies over and over again for in-game sets and lots of arbitrary points, you only have about a week left to do so, so enjoy. Thank you for watching this episode of Too Long Didn't Read Dota News. See you next time.